Hello and welcome. My name is Peace Mitchell and I'm co-founder of S. Before we begin, I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners and elders of the land that I live. I'm so excited to be here today to celebrate the launch of our new book, Begin It Now. And to help me celebrate, I have one of my fabulous co-authors joining me today, Sharon. Please join me in making her very welcome.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Peace. Thanks so much for having me.
Sharon, for people who haven't met you before, I would love you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and the work that you do.
Well, my name is Sharon Swietek, and I am a lawyer by day. That is what I've been doing for my professional job for the past almost 25 years now. But my true passion is helping trauma survivors. So a couple of years ago, I started a YouTube channel, Surviving Together. Just got done doing a live right before this. And it is a safe space for trauma survivors to come together, connect, and, you know, heal together, as well as providing trauma related education for everyone. And it is my honor to have been part of this book. It was a true piece of my healing from my own trauma. That's where I come from in regards to this. Peace, I can't thank you and Women Changing the World enough for being part of this.
Sharon, your chapter is called Who I Was Meant to Be. Can you tell us why you chose this title for your chapter?
For two reasons. One, as a trauma survivor, there is and a survivor of childhood trauma, there's always that little kid inside of us who is meant to be someone. But trauma changes us, and we're never able to quite capture that person that we were, but it doesn't mean that who we are going to be is less than. So, my chapter was really a journey of thinking about who I was meant to be before the trauma and who I could be after, and trying to become that person.
Sharon, in your chapter, you talk about the healing journey from healing your children and that as well as groups. Can you tell more about the recovery process?
It was in fits and starts, as lots of healing from trauma is. Healing from trauma is never linear, and that's one of the things that I wanted to get across to people is just because your healing has setbacks, just because you're not actively always dealing with it, doesn't mean that you're still not healing from it. My healing from trauma really began when I first went to a therapist who understood what trauma was and allowed me to be that victim, to feel all of that angst, all of that anger, all of the things that I had been holding inside, all those questions that I had, because I had different types of trauma growing up, and I didn't always know whether or not the abuse that I went through actually was abuse. Is this something that I should be even concerned about? So when I got that permission from a counselor in college, that was really the first time that I allowed myself to think about me as a survivor and about what I went through, be able to piece it all together and start putting it behind me. So from there, I really took a look inward and tried to figure out what do I need at this point. And what I needed was somebody to help navigate this healing journey. I had no idea how to go about this. And fortunately, I found a therapist who was a trauma informed therapist, which at the time was rare. There, there's a lot more of them out there right now. And began understanding what trauma does to you, what trauma does in your body, what trauma triggers are, and developed a toolbox of positive coping skills to be able to deal with those times when the negative thoughts wanted to overrun me, or when I was triggered by, just something in the environment or a smell that reminded me of the abuse. And as I was able to work through that, part of my healing journey really was getting to help other trauma survivors. So I started volunteering with our local YWCA with other survivors and giving back and letting others know that there is hope, that healing is possible. And that eventually led me to starting my YouTube channel. And through that, I always said, I wasn't going to be concerned about the number of people who showed up in my live or the number of subscribers I had. Really, it's about connecting with other trauma survivors and letting them know that they're not alone. And they help me as much as I help them. I'm still on my healing journey, right? I don't think that it ever truly ends, but I'm much better positioned now than I ever was in my life, which is exciting.
Um, it's amazing the community that you've created as well, that you now have a platform on YouTube for communication, connection, and with other trauma survivors. Can you tell us more about how this began?
Yeah, so I was in an alcoholic marriage for 8 years, which, if anybody is familiar with that, the cycle is really similar to other domestic violence situations. And I got out and I was raising a child on my own. And his father wasn't extremely active in our lives. And I was finding I had to explain to this little kid where his dad was, how his dad acted when he did see him. And I found I didn't really understand it. And I ended up on a YouTube channel in a community for people with addictions. And I found that overwhelmingly, the people who were there for whatever their addiction was, the underlying reason for their addiction was some form of trauma. And in particular, were people talking about their sexual assaults, and they didn't have a place to go. Therapy is expensive, and not everyone feels comfortable going to somebody else as a therapist. Some people have different views as to what that means if they, break down and actually see a therapist. And so I really started talking to these people in this other forum about their experiences and would you be interested in having a place of your own? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. They're like, you create it, we'll come. And so almost 2 years now, it'll be 2 years in January that I started Surviving Together with really the goal of just having a safe space for trauma survivors to be able to connect with one another, not necessarily have to share their story, but just know that they're in a space where people understand what they've gone through. And a lot of times, trauma survivors, it's difficult for their support system to understand what they've been through. They don't know how to support the trauma survivor. And so, this was another opportunity then for people to not only connect, but to build this community of people. And it's still pretty small by YouTube standards, but what I've been able to do with this is expand upon that initial thought of just bringing sexual assault survivors together to include all forms of trauma, no matter where your trauma has come from, whether it's PTSD because you've been in a war or a mass shooting or domestic violence situation or a sexual assault, medical trauma, narcissism. I mean, there's there's an endless list of trauma events that can be the source of somebody's trauma. So, really making this a place where no matter what you've been through, here is a community of people who truly understand one another. But more than that is the education piece because it really is for everyone. And it's something I'm extremely passionate about is educating not only the other survivors on their own trauma, but also people just in society and their support systems on how do we support survivors? How can you be there for them? Because it is so important that survivors have connection, whether that is with other survivors or whether that's just with people who are in their lives who can help them through this. It's really difficult dealing with trauma in isolation. So that was the driving force behind starting Surviving Together. And I'm really excited to see where next year goes. I've kind of got a plan as to what I want to do with it. And um, the community is so welcoming of all newcomers. And I could not do this without them.
It's amazing. It's a beautiful community that you've created, Sharon, and providing support to so many people. Well, thank you so much for being here today and chatting with me. And thank you so much for your chapter in Begin It Now as well. I know our readers relate to shared, and thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peace.
Thank you, everyone who's tuned in today. Well, as part of our Women Changing the World online set, grab a copy of Begin It Now chapters as well. You can grab it at wcwpress.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye, Sharon. Thanks so much.
Bye.